My name is Evan McCarthy, and I was just a broke single dad sitting in row 17 of a red-eye flight to Denver when the world changed forever. I wasn't always broke. There was a time I wore pressed shirts, drove a leased SUV, and pretended I had control over life. But when my wife Emily passed away from ovarian cancer 2 winters ago, everything collapsed like wet cardboard. Bills piled up, grief drowned reason, and soon it was just me and my 6-year-old daughter, Lucy, in a 1-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a rent I could barely cover driving Uber and stacking shelves at a grocery store. This trip wasn't supposed to happen. I hadn't been on a plane in years. But Lucy's only living relative, my estranged sister Rachel in Denver, had called, offering to help. "Send Lucy to stay with me for a month," she said. "Catch your breath." I refused at first. But when Lucy started waking up from nightmares, crying for a mom she barely remembered, I knew I needed help. So I bought the cheapest one-way ticket for the 2 of us. It put us in row 17, middle and window seat, next to a man who'd change our lives in a way I still can't quite explain. He boarded last, wearing jeans, a hoodie, and a ball cap pulled low. Said his name was Alan. He smelled faintly of cedar and aftershave, and had the look of someone both exhausted and deeply at peace. We didn't talk much at first. Lucy was asleep with her head on my lap, and I was too ashamed to make small talk. My hands were cracked and dry from overwork, and my backpack had a hole in it where the zipper used to be. About an hour into the flight, we hit turbulence, the kind that silences a plane. Lucy woke up crying. I tried to comfort her, holding her tightly while pretending I wasn't scared too. Then the oxygen masks dropped. There was screaming, a flash of lightning, and for a few long seconds, the plane lurched and dipped hard to the right. I remember clutching Lucy and whispering, "It's okay, baby, Daddy's got you." But I wasn't sure we'd make it. Alan, he reached for both of us. Without hesitation, he covered Lucy's head with his arms and grabbed my shoulder to keep me steady. Then, blackness. I came to in a haze of flashing lights and smoke. The cabin was half gutted. The tail had separated, and somehow, by some miracle, we had landed in an open field just outside Lincoln, Nebraska. I wasn't badly hurt. A few bruises, a sprained wrist. Lucy had a bump on her forehead but was crying, alert, alive. Alan was bleeding from the leg, pinned beneath part of the overhead compartment. I yelled for help, but he shook his head. "Get your daughter out," he said. "She comes first." I did. I carried her down what was left of the fuselage, stepping over torn seats, broken glass, and people crying for loved ones. When I looked back, Alan was gone. I don't remember if I saw anyone take him. I just remember being ushered into an ambulance and never seeing him again. The next few weeks were a blur. Press interviews, hospital visits, therapy for Lucy. People kept calling me a hero for carrying her out, but I didn't feel like one. I just felt broken, empty, numb. 3 months passed. I was working nights again, scraping together enough to keep Lucy in school and maybe buy a second-hand stroller. Then, one Monday morning, I got a call. "Is this Evan McCarthy?" a woman asked. "Please hold for Mr. Alan Rowe." The name didn't click until I heard the voice. "Hey, Evan," he said. "Row 17. Remember? Alive." And then he said something that nearly made me drop the phone. "I'm the CEO of Skybridge Air. The airline you flew with that night." I was flying incognito, trying to understand our customer experience. I had no idea it would turn into the worst and best flight of my life. I couldn't speak. He continued, "I've been looking for you. You saved your daughter, but you also tried to save me. I've never forgotten that." Then came the offer. A job, not charity. He made that clear. "Come work with us," he said. "We need someone who understands people, someone who knows what it's like to fall and get back up." He flew me out to their HQ. I wore a borrowed suit and carried Lucy on my hip. He met us at the gate with open arms. That's how I ended up here, from broke dad in row 17 to standing at the foot of a conference room where the CEO of Skybridge Air just called my name. I didn't know how to walk into that room. It had glass walls, tall leather chairs, a panoramic view of downtown Denver, and the quiet pressure of success humming in every corner. Alan, yes, that Alan, stood at the head of the table, his posture relaxed but commanding. Behind him, a digital presentation displayed the title, Empathy in action, a new direction for Skybridge Air, and below it my name. Alan looked straight at me and smiled. "Everyone, meet Evan McCarthy," he said. "He doesn't come from Wall Street or Harvard. But I trust him more than anyone I've met in this industry." I didn't speak for a moment. I looked down at Lucy, sitting beside me, coloring on a legal pad with a red pen she'd found in my jacket. Her presence gave me strength. Alan gestured for me to take a seat beside him. Then, one by one, the XX introduced themselves. Some looked skeptical, others curious, all of them quiet when Alan spoke again. "Evan," he said, "tell them what you told me the night before the crash." I blinked. "I didn't say much, did I?" "You said, 'All I want is to feel like I'm not invisible anymore.'" He paused. That stuck with me. My throat tightened. I hadn't meant for him to remember. But he had, so I spoke. Not like a businessman or a public speaker, just like a dad who'd lost too much, seen too much, but still showed up every morning with his daughter's breakfast packed and her shoes tied. I told them what it was like to fly with no confidence, no money, and no idea how I'd feed Lucy the next week. I told them how the smallest kindness, a warm smile, a flight attendant kneeling to say hello to a kid, a hand on your shoulder when the world is falling apart, can mean everything. I didn't ask for a job that day. But I left with the title Community Experience Advisor. It didn't pay 6 figures. It didn't come with a car or a corner office. But it gave me purpose. And that was enough. The weeks rolled on. Alan and I worked closely. He didn't treat me like charity or a project. He treated me like a peer, a friend, a man who had something valuable to offer. I visited flight crews, rode with passengers, sat quietly in airports just listening, and I started seeing what Alan saw that night. There was something broken in the way we treat each other when systems and speed become more important than souls. So we started something new, a training program called Row 17. It wasn't just about customer service, it was about humanity. We brought in survivors of the crash, people from all walks of life. We told stories, we asked hard questions, and slowly Skybridge started changing, not in dramatic, flashy ways, but in small ones, quiet ones. A pilot offered a handwritten note to a child flying alone. A gate agent noticed a widow struggling and walked her to her gate. A frequent flyer tweeted about how a flight attendant sat with a nervous passenger and held their hand during takeoff. And me, I kept showing up. Every single day. One afternoon, about 6 months later, Alan called me into his office. "I'm stepping down," he said. "What?" I blinked. He chuckled. "I've done what I came to do. I want to spend more time with my family. And the board has already approved my successor." I smiled. "You finally get a break." Then he slid a folder across the table. It had my name on it. "What's this?" I asked. He leaned back. "The board wants you to take over the division, full-time, with a team, a budget, and a new title, Vice President of Customer Empathy and Experience." I laughed. I thought he was joking. Until he didn't laugh back. "Me?" I said. "I was just a broke dad. You were the CEO?" He nodded. "Exactly." 2 years later, Lucy and I walked into a small townhouse we could finally call our own. I carried her across the threshold like she was royalty. She looked up at me and said, "Daddy, do we live here forever?" I knelt down. "As long as we want." She hugged me tight. And for the first time since Emily died, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel, hope. And then one Friday, on the anniversary of the crash, Alan surprised me again. We were standing on a makeshift stage in front of the Skybridge staff and the families of those who had been on that fateful flight. A plaque was unveiled. It read, Row 17V, where everything changed. Alan stepped to the mic. "It changed for me, for Evan, for a lot of people. But it's not just about survival. It's about what you do after you've survived." Then he turned and looked at me. Evan McCarthy reminded me what leadership really looks like. Not just suits and numbers, but presence, compassion, the kind of strength you only find when you've lost everything and still choose to love. The crowd stood, clapped, some cried. I didn't speak. I just held Lucy's hand, nodded slowly, and let the moment land. But that wasn't the end. Because every flight I've taken since, every row I've passed on the way down the aisle, every parent clutching a child's toy, every nervous traveler wiping their eyes before takeoff. I remember what it felt like to be that person, and I remember that someone once noticed me. When I thought I didn't matter, when I thought I was invisible, and everything changed. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing in the world is to be called by name. And maybe, just maybe, you don't have to wear a suit to change a company. You don't have to be rich to be remembered. Sometimes, all it takes is holding someone's hand when the world is falling. Sometimes all it takes is being in row 17. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. And for more stories like this, true, raw, and human, subscribe to the channel, because you never know. The next name they call might be yours.